I'm going to start recording. Yay. All right. I'm just going to start this thing because we have 24 seconds. You good with that?
Yeah, I'm ready.
Cool. All right. Hi, Facebook. Hopefully you guys can see us. I'm going to pull this up just to keep an eye on that. Oh, going live. All right. I'm getting a countdown anyway.
Ooh.
What do you know?
I like how it does a rainbow count, like psychedelic rainbow countdown.
I know. I need visuals. I need beautiful visuals. Hi, everyone. Whoever is hanging out in the room with us, hello. Please type something in the chat if you would, just to let us know that you can hear us and see us and that you're here ready to rock with us on this webinar. I have with me today lovely Erica Woodhouse of Perch Planning. She's a dear friend of mine. Now, before I launch into her introduction, I do want to remind you all that if you haven't checked out my private Facebook group, the Alchemy Business Accelerator group, I'm going to put that in the chat just in case. You should join that group. We have a lot of conversations for small businesses and a fair amount of training in there to keep the conversation going. Hi, Michael Makovic. Hi. Oh my gosh, this is a dear friend of mine from way back in the day. Glad you're in here. So yeah, check out the group if you guys can. That would be great. So this is Erica Woodhouse. She is a small business owner here in Concord, Massachusetts. Again, a dear friend of mine, and she owns Perch Planning, which helps homeowners navigate that process of renovation planning, right? That concept of how do I create this space and make it a direct reflection of who we are and support the functioning of that home. And I'm going to let Erica talk more about that, but she's really good about offering advice and clarity around pinpointing goals, pitfalls, costs, and real estate ramifications. She's also a brilliant designer to boot, and she's very good about helping you to create high-level functionality within your budget. So her tagline is, she loves that place where houses and people meet. And I like to call her a house doula, because that just like kind of helps me have a solid understanding. Like it's this process of, it's kind of like giving birth. You're not going to do it very often. And many times it's the first time you're doing it. And so it's nice to have someone who has a great deal of experience and can step in to that experience with you and be your advocate. So Erica, so glad you're here with us today. I'm really excited. I saw the slides. They are kick-ass and gorgeous, of course. So I'm very, very excited to be part of this presentation. And again, for those of you who are following along, I'm going to make myself go away and mute myself, but I will be keeping a close eye on the chat. We will be doing Q&A at the end of Erica's presentation. So hang out if you have specific questions. We'll have a great chat. I'll keep an eye on Facebook and the webinar space. So Erica, my dear, take it away.
Thanks so much. I'm so thrilled to be here. Tara has been a guiding light in my life because she's helped me through this process of lifting up a new business. So I'm opening up the slides. Here we go. So hi and welcome. So we have this program, it's Feather Your Nest in a Pandemic. So the idea would be we're all here. It's like our usual spot. We're in our homes, but now we've got these added layers. And so I'm going to talk about those layers we're all actually living in. So you already have some thoughts about it, but I want to talk about what it looks like through the lens of what I offer as Perch. So let me tell you a little bit about my origin story. So Perch, what's your deal? My husband and I have been developers for 10 years in the greater Boston area. We started on that journey by coming to it from other professions. My husband's by training a historian. I am a former opera singer and stage director, and we were here looking for our own house. And we looked all through the greater Boston area. We're kind of disappointed by what we saw. sometimes, or just got really curious about it. My husband really runs a spreadsheet. We got very curious. We're wondering about the history of the homes. And we decided that after we noodled some of the granular details, that maybe we would try renovating houses ourselves and reselling them. So we've been doing that for 10 years. One of the biggest things that we like to do is to make sure that we're refreshing the homes. They live in the place where they have been built. They have a story from the past, but they have a story yet to tell in the future. So we're refreshing these things for the next generation. So, you know, we're kind of doing things now in the way that we have done things for ourselves. We kind of started from our own process. And now I offer that help to clients. And I really feel strongly that my mission is to advocate for people so that they're making the smartest decision, not for the house or strictly for themselves, but also with the thought in mind that your home is usually your biggest asset for most of us. And it's that touchy place where you need to get what you need from it. You need to be happy there. It needs to please you. It needs to make you whole. And it also needs to be this larger thing. It's your asset. It's sort of you have to look at it with a little bit of a colder eye as well. And so I'm trying to find that sweet spot in the middle that helps you navigate what the right decision is, what's going to make you a peaceful person in making the decision. That's not always easy, but if you have a plan, you can achieve that. So we've designed and planned projects all through the greater Boston area. We've done lots of them. I was going to give you all the details, but you can check us out at nickelwood.com if you're interested in seeing some of the things we've done. So I consider myself a little bit like a house therapist. And one of the things that I'm aiming for, no matter what your goals are or why you've come to me, we're going to come up with a plan. Like I was saying, we're coming to that sweet spot of any decision, and coming up with that plan gives us the ability to have some control in a lot of situations that don't always have control. That's renovation. That's also a pandemic. So today I'm going to talk about how to seize back some of that control that we feel like we've lost. Like we're all feeling a little bit unsure of how to make a decision. And I think when you're doing something around your home, there are some actual solid points that you can use to do that. So one of my goals is to make sure that people are savvy consumers of home. So it can be your biggest decisions, your smallest decisions. And I'm not necessarily saying here's the right decision for you and the only decision. I'm trying to teach you how to think about it so that it becomes an education, and you can use that same formula to make a lot of the decisions that happen for you. And that goes for little things that we might need to do to make our houses more livable right now, because we're living in our houses in a way that's different than it had been 6 months ago. Yep, so in the end, you're gonna come up with that plan. Right now, I'm having trouble seeing my whole slide, so I'm gonna move my own face. Here's the question, can I do that? Yeah, so you've got your own goals. That process of figuring out what your own goals are may be easy for you and maybe isn't, because you have more than one stakeholder. You've got your whole family, you have a household, maybe you have a spouse, maybe it is just you and you feel kind of like, okay, I have to make all these decisions and that feels overwhelming. So you have to get through that process and figure out what the goal is. So that's our first circle in the diagram there. Then there are the realities of life, budget and time, you know, the laws of physics, as I like to say. So that's always going to inform any project, but right now during a pandemic, some of those things will be, you know, on your radar differently than they would have been prior to this. We've got longer lead times with products, materials. We've got different availability of contractors, things like that. Then we're gonna go to the real estate values, or the money you spend on it and what that gives you back in value. So we'll talk a little bit about real estate values right now during this weird moment in time and what that might mean on your decision making. So we'll talk about that later, but that's one of the factors you'll take up into consideration. And then there's the chaos and the obstacles that come. Part of it is just knowing that that's going to happen. The arc of your story that's like smooth from beginning to end, that doesn't exist. So I think part of my job is to help you understand and embrace the fact that it's not going to be a smooth process from A to B, and how and build your muscles for managing problems as they come along. So that's one of the things that I like to help folks with. Some of it is just managing your own expectations. So here we are looking at it through the lens of the pandemic, and I know that probably there is a real range of thinking on this for anyone who might be listening. Some of us get it. Okay, this is for real. This is happening. This is going to be for a while. And then those of you who are not, like, newsflash, reality check, we're going to be doing this for a while. And the four walls that we're living in as we, tunnel down into the winter are something that we're going to need to think about. So that's why I say reality check. We'll be here for a while. So let's settle in. Let's do something about it. Let's take control. So, you see what I've said here. The twilight zone that we're living in requires creative and strategic thinking. A lovely colleague of mine had written about the twilight zone and specific things that you can do to take control of that. And that weird feeling is something that we all need to get comfortable with and figure out, is this home going to meet my needs, and how can it do better doing that? So I have some ideas about the short and long-term thinking within that settling in. When I'm talking in this talk, when I'm talking about short-term, I'm kind of thinking about 6 to 12 months, thinking that a lot of people, if you're a family, you are having more people at home, more people working remotely, maybe schooling remotely. That may go in and out, and you're maybe using your space in a different way, but not forever. So you're trying to make changes that make it in that strange spot where it's kind of temporary, but also something that you don't feel is, just throwing together something that feels flimsy, like you're always on a, stool that's not quite solid. So that's the 6 to 12 version. And I'll talk a little bit about how you can think about that in a way that's really healthy and usable. And dare I say it, like inviting and fun. And then the longer term thing. So you might do some things that will help you in the short term anyway, but what if they're really long-term kind of infrastructural changes you're doing to your house? And if that's the case, I'm looking at a 10 years, but it could be like you're planning to retire and live into this house until they carry you out the door. I want to make sure that any decisions you make and the money you put in make good sense for that long-term plan. So this is a pretty obvious thing, and it's obviously been a theme throughout the pandemic. I'm sure if you're on any newsletter lists for any major home things, that everybody's talking about how to declutter, where to send your stuff. There's been a lot of this out there. So I don't need to explain to you how to do this or that you should do this. You know Marie Kondo, you know how to do it. I'm not really great at this myself. My husband must be somewhere in the background having a really good laugh. But this is something that will make you feel better. The visual clutter can really disturb your peace. And once it's gone, even if you didn't even realize it before, it'll really help you able to make the next bits, smart decisions and living in the space, especially as the winter draws in. So in this whole thing, I'm kind of thinking of two large sections, and the short term is the overarching idea here is to be nimble. And here I have this little quote because it feels very much like this pandemic experience we're having. We both believe and disbelieve 100 times an hour, which keeps believing nimble, which means, okay, what's real? What's true? Like one minute I think it's okay to do this thing, and this one it feels risky. Those things change a lot. And I think that we can adapt our thinking and our spaces to be nimble in that way. So that's the overarching thing. Let's try to keep it light, keep ourselves agile, do your mental stretching. So here I have, yes, of course. We all have ideas about what we would like to have happen, where we would like to be in the future. And it wouldn't be awesome if we were all walking into this office every day and you had everything put away and you knew exactly where the stack of things you were going to work on that day was, and like you had an outlet right where you need it. Okay, but so this is the ideal. But what I want to say about that ideal and all of these pictures you'll see on Instagram or wherever you might do your cruising through the internet daily, there are a lot of aspirational pictures out there. And I encourage you to find inspiration from them rather than scolding, because I do this myself and this is kind of where I live. You know, this is what I do. I don't think everybody's looking as much as all of this as say I am or someone in the design world, but I do want to say we're all human. So like give yourself permission to not have this all nailed right down. I'm not nailing it, but every once in a while having time to make a little corner of happy at my house and fixing problems. And I'll tell you a couple of funny stories about things we've done to solve problems like that too. I also want to say, though, these short and long-term decisions you're making don't have to be in conflict with one another. So that's also part of this, like being smart about your planning, being nimble, being open to flexibility, maybe looking at it from a different angle, and also knowing that that longer-term decision you make, that needs to be more solid. The shorter-term one doesn't need to, it shouldn't negate any of the factors in your longer term decision. So one thing I want to say here is you got to create bubbles of space. We started into the summer, maybe in an unusual spot for a lot of families. We have 3 kids. I have kids that are ages 13, 10, and 6. And they have different things that they need. And we had summer school, and my oldest is in a year-round school. So we were sitting there at the beginning of July, totally panicking because we had different formats than the schools had been offering in the spring when they were all just scrambling. And it was also a temporary summer school situation. Anyway, long story short, we found ourselves having to figure out how to create space for 3 learners who were going to be basically on Zoom calls, open calls for the whole morning. And 2 adults, one of them sort of backing up the kids, but also trying to get some stuff done, and one of us trying to work. So this is a tricky situation because our house is sort of open plan. It's a modern house. So as much as I think we have enough space, we don't necessarily have a lot of dividers and ways of, you know, getting real privacy and space. So I had to get creative, and so did my husband, about figuring out how to make that buffer work for each person. So that also goes to this larger question of how can you make dividers in your home that would be temporary? How can you be creative about thinking about those bubbles of space? So if you really need a dedicated place where you can close the door to it at the end, you might think of something like that center picture where it's an office closet. You know, I know that a lot of you, this is not like shocking news. You probably thought of some of these things, but I do think every once in a while when you zip through a few pictures and ideas, especially when you're, you know, we're barreling down the road to possibly, you know, say we start school and say 3 weeks in, the kids are back in our laps. What can we do that's nimble that would allow us to inexpensively outfit the house and sort of give those places that will be safe places to work and to learn? So that office closet was one idea. We did that in our old apartment, and, you know, not ideal, but better than nothing. I also love the idea of these screen dividers. This one that I have in the photo is a little more transparent than some. You know, that idea, you can do it yourself. You could find it, you know, find it online. Easy to order up, easy to go grab something like that at IKEA. So that kind of thing is easy to find, but I feel like it's also something that can go away. And if you were to Google this, you'd find lots of fun design ideas where this could be used in the future, when hopefully we are, you know, the pandemic questions are in our rearview mirror, at least remote work and learning is less intense. I also, as far as bubbles of space go, kind of fell in love with this tent idea. And it's totally one of these things that's just a tool. But I like this idea that if you create a space, this one is like it pops up and you can put it on any bed. But that whole idea that you're creating a space within existing space that can be really just that person's own. They can run the light in there. They can handle it however they want. I think the feedback is that kids really enjoy having a place that's just where they get to do what they want to do. And they're separate. Of course, that doesn't do the job of sound barriers, but that's, that's another tool. And if you guys need any of the links or thoughts about this, I can help you, let me know at the end, and I will give you the access to that kind of stuff. In the next thought, we have talking again about being nimble. Once again, like those ideas that I just gave you, they are just like a way of thinking about it. And that's that same concept that I feel like when we're all sort of thinking about something in the abstract, you're like, yeah, we have time in our, we have the space in our house to accommodate all of these folks. But when you are actually in the situation, it's a little bit more difficult. And if you have a few of these things to think of in your back pocket, in your brain's suitcase, you will, be able to get back to that nimble mindset that you'll take things, maybe a lap desk, maybe a folding tray that would be like a TV tray, something that you can tuck up and fold away. And I like this idea of something that, okay, you have a certain number of concentrated hours. We all want to be healthy and take breaks. What happens when, we're in the second half of the day and you're trying to encourage everyone to do something that's more physical or go outside or, can we take this space and make it not feel like it was our workspace? So, or, if you're using a bed as a workspace, which some people have really done, how can you tuck that away and say, okay, now we're in the other zone of life? So again, that goes back to that idea of being nimble, and allowing those ideas to kind of filter in so that when you're faced with the decisions and the actual work that you need to do, that you can turn the page and access some of those things that have been swimming around back there. Here I have some specific things, and this is like based directly on some of our experiences of 3 learners and 2 adults trying to work, for instance. So, lighting is really key, and it's really easy to get some inexpensive lighting. Literally the clip-on lamp, I have one right here because I was trying to brighten up my workspace for this webinar. But fun lighting really will make it feel differently. Like after you've found a weird bed tent situation, or you're going to find a corner. We literally made a closet learning spot for my 6-year-old in the bottom of the office closet. So she sits right next to me when I'm trying to work, and I need to get some lighting going in there, like one of these. And I was thinking maybe I'll do some of those fairy lights. Another thing that was going on, especially for young learners, we found that the open Zoom call, the teacher would say, okay, you're on a 5-minute break, or work on such and such a thing for 15 minutes. Well, when you're 6, that isn't easy to gauge. And if it isn't easy to gauge for you as a young learner, you need a parent to back you up. And that parent has had 3 minutes, and then 7 minutes, and then 2.5 minutes to actually have a complete thought. Wouldn't it be great if you could set them up with the ability to gauge something simple like that time on their own? So we used an egg timer. So the teacher would say, it's 5-minute break, and she like turned the little timer. It came off. She went back to work, and that helped us a lot because it meant fewer interruptions for tech help or just facilitating. And also for us, so we would have there are no doors in between our 3 learners, and so headphones were huge. And I know this is not a news flash for anybody. Make sure your kids have them. They probably do already for school, but they just love popping those on. And even now, sometimes they'll pop them on to watch a show on a computer. And I find I use them, even sometimes I'm not listening to anything, to signal to other people that I'm working, and the office hours are not open right now. So that headphones for everybody in the family, I feel like, is a must. This strange little object in the bottom right corner, another tool we really enjoyed, is a white noise machine. This one is much prettier than the one that we have, but the idea really helps me. My kids might be frolicking around. We live in this open concept house, and just the smallest thing, they're doing exactly what they should be doing, but it interrupts my concentration. I flip the white noise machine on, and I can get so much more done. And then if I put my headphones on top of the white noise sound, it's awesome. So those are little tips and tricks from the road. I literally dug that out of the closet because it had been there since my youngest was little. A friend had fobbed it off to me. So you just never know what might come up and end up being useful. So, think outside the box, as they say. So that's kind of the short-term stuff. I want to make sure you know that idea is keep it inexpensive, but it doesn't need to be unpleasant. And there are things that you can tuck away and come back to at another time. And you may need to go back and rely on those if you go through the long-term planning process and decide it's not the right time for you to make that, then I say lean into the short-term kinds of things. Spend a little money on a nice IKEA desk. One caveat with some of those tools and tips and tricks, there are lots of runs on the things that are super popular. So when you find the link online and it's, say a tray table that everybody loves as their, temporary work desk, they're selling out fast. So that's been a real trend. You can't find that thing anymore. I think, and this goes back to kind of like the heart and soul of what we do, check out vintage used free. Go on, depending on how permanently and how nice you want it, or if you're just kind of like, I just need a thing. Check out your local town's buy nothing page. Check out Facebook Marketplace. But I would also look at places like Etsy. Of course, I know it's, mass produced, but I love the high-minded design and low budget of IKEA. But if those things are sold out, check for the used and free option. It's better for the planet as well. So that goes back. Another place that I always love to check, and I'm just going to plug at this point, is there's a place in Belmont called Restoration Project. This is best for those who are in the Boston area. And they're a thrift shop, and they have little, very affordable things all the time. Restoration Project. I'll put that in the notes. And they're safe. They're a safe shopping option right now. So I think that's good to kind of keep things out of the production line. You know what I'm saying? Reuse, reduce, recycle. So thinking about the long term, which is a bit of a weightier question, as we know, I'm sitting here with this idea. The teenage me is like, don't tell me what to do. And then the adult me is like, oh, somebody please tell me what to do. I think this is happening a lot for us right now. In the millions of decisions that we are exhausted by every day that we have to do to make ourselves safe and whole at a time when there is not a lot of knowability. So I again lean towards the let's plan it out. Let's know what we know, and then really search our souls for like what the right decision is within those parameters for me. I'm going to take a little sidebar before we go to the overarching question of, that big picture planning. One natural thing that's happening in this time frame is that we will have maintenance that needs to happen on our home that isn't avoidable. Your stove breaks down, you need someone to come fix it. There's a pipe leaking, you need someone to fix it. So if it's inside your home, I want to give you a couple quick takeaway tips for how to manage that if that hasn't happened for you yet, and maybe you're worried about it. The first time that happened for us, I was like, oh, okay, I have to think about how this works for the policies that we've had about the way we interact with the world. So this jives with a lot of the things that I recommend anyway. You want to communicate like crazy. Do as much as you can beforehand, by phone, by computer. I think businesses are much better at doing this. It will depend on the business that you're working with and how well they manage this. But if you can get a phone number, you're going to be in good shape. I also think in your own mind, set your policy. Everyone who comes into this house must wear a mask, or they must take their shoes off, or they must ring the door, like whatever their thing is. Set expectations beforehand in that format that you've established. Use the phone, call them, make sure that they know, hey, so I'm going to be masked, and you should mask for them as well, of course. And you want them to be masked when they come in. A couple other things that you can do for yourself. Open the windows. Right now, open the windows for sure. Get some ventilation going. They always say to run the AC when folks are in there, or and I think that's fine, but I feel like just the air circulation with fresh air is more comfortable in my mind, unless you have some special filtration process. So that, that's an easy thing to do. And you can be out of their general vicinity when they're doing it. Say someone is working on your stove, like go in the other room. I do caution though, because I'm a person like in my advocacy for my clients, I do like to make sure that you know what's going on and that you can ask questions as you see it. So if you're in that situation, you're like, I have a question about how I manage it when my pilot light goes out or something like that. I would just take note of that and see if you can ask that either by phone or take the conversation outside and 6+ feet distance and have those same conversations like you would with your neighbor you bumped into on your walk, that kind of thing. This isn't much talked about and it's probably not a real problem, but if that person should need to use the restroom while they're in your home and they're just there to fix your washing machine or something short, I personally don't like to tell someone that they can't use the facilities. People will generally not be doing that. They generally don't anyway, but I would probably wipe down the obvious surfaces for their safety. And then if they used it, do the same on the exit after they leave. And of course, disinfect any surfaces they've touched. Most of those things will be pretty commonsensical and obvious to you. Depending on the service provider, they may not take a check, or they may not want, who knows what their deal is, or they may only take checks. I'm sorry, I'm saying that backwards. I was thinking of a drain guy we had, and he's like old school. So that's not the end of the world. It depends on what your comfort level with this is. Just establish some way ahead of time, plan how you'll pay, or ask them, like what the preferred method is. There an online format to pay. I suggest don't pay it until after the work is finished and you are satisfied. That's a general obviousness, but I feel like a lot of people, especially when you're one-to-one with that service provider, it gets awkward. You don't really know what the procedure should be. So you end up just being like, okay, here, how much is it? I'll take care of it. So that's a thing to think about. This little picture is the project we just finished and sold this spring. So I just want to be like, yay, my little kitchen. All right, so that was a little bit, but don't be afraid to don't put off maintenance too much is what I just want to say on that. It's possible to do it safely. Okay, so here we are living in this this new pandemic lifestyle, and I think this summer has given us a little bit of comfort, like a little bit of distance from the whole thing, and we're maybe in a little bit of a la-la land every once in a while, being able to say like things are kind of normal now. But I think it's going to start to get a little more intense once the weather changes again and we're facing different realities as far as if things were to close. I hope that's not the case, but if it were, let's be ready for it. So you're looking at your four walls and you're like, okay, this isn't working. People are underfoot. We're in each other's business. Probably relationships are different than they had been at one time, whether that's between your kids or communication of like how a work day goes. Like, remember, a lot of people wouldn't see someone for 8 hours at least, and now we're around each other all the time, and we still have all the responsibilities at least, if not twice. So that's a real that's an intense way to live in our homes. We're living in them in ways that we never have before. So it means we're looking at them in a different way than we have before, and that's important to remember. So I would guess that, this description I'm about to give affects, everybody will have checked the box on at least one of these things. So you're staring at four walls and you're thinking, I got to fix that. Maybe I should get to that project. You're also thinking, I did not want to spend this whole conference call sitting on this bed / floor / in this corner, in this closet. And you realize like the answer to this might be more space or rethinking around in the way that we had discussed before of creating bubbles of space. And sometimes that white noise machine, lovely as it is, just isn't going to do it. You need a door to close. I'm kind of right there myself right now. So, and you also might see a project that has been sort of sitting there, and it's easy to ignore it when you're at the office 8 hours a day and you just come home and you're like, the door to this linen closet just isn't shutting, and I hate this bathroom. Like that is becoming more apparent. And then there are tons of layers of questions. Should we do it? Is it a good decision to make this plan right now for lots of reasonable reasons? And I do think you should be thinking about these things. So you may have always intended to make that change. And you know you need more space, possibly. But is it a good decision? And the new layers on top of it are, we're in a pandemic. Should we be doing it at all anyway, regardless of the pandemic? And then, should we be spending this money right now, or should we be saving everything? Because end times are coming. And I've got, I've started with the beans in my closet, but is that enough? Should we plan better and save everything we can? And then there's the level of like having a level of contact. We've discussed having the, repairman in the home, possibly, or repairwoman. I do know one. What is the likelihood that that's going to make our risk greater, and how do I mitigate that risk? Or is it worth considering? Like, are we just crazy to think about that at all? It's back to that, like, would somebody just tell me what to do? Is this crazy? So then it comes to those larger picture questions that I advise clients about all the time, which are, is this a good long-term investment? Given all those factors, is it going to cost the same amount as it would during typical times? And will it uphold our investment long-term? Which is, for most people, their greatest asset. Like I personally don't own several large assets like this. This is like, my house counts a lot. So if I put money into it, even if it's something that's going to be a great pleasure to me, and it won't come back to me in the home value, am I happy to pay that pleasure tax? You have to kind of consider. It doesn't mean it's a bad idea to do something that's kind of unusual, but you might consider whether it's worth it to you. So let's talk about what that might look like in a situation. So here's a case study. These are real people, but the picture's not them. The names have been changed to protect the innocent. So Lauren and Eric have been living in their home for 4 years, and they plan to be there long term. This isn't, just, okay, once the kids are out of school, we're going to head out. So they know that what they invest is going to be held on long term, and that's one of the big factors that I'll talk about later. They have 2 kids, but they're not little kids. They're in middle school and high school. They're almost grown-up sized humans. And their whole family is planning to work remotely in the fall. And learn remotely, that is. Like, everybody's going remote. So we've got Eric is the main breadwinner. He is on conference calls like almost all day long. And he's been working in the 3-season porch. And that's because, just like what I said, there's a door that he can close. And it's the only extra space that, doesn't double as something else, and people wouldn't be in and out all summer, that closes, and it could be private for him. But still, like, it's not perfect. People sometimes go out that door to let the dog out. He can see what's going on in the kitchen. It gets to be kind of, it can be kind of chaotic there too. And let me mention, a 3-season porch is cold in the winter, right? So it's coming up to winter, and they're both like, and they're planners, so this is like ideal. That's what you want to do. But so they were looking at winter coming up and thinking, okay, this is not sustainable. He's going to continue to be remote. They need to stay that way for him. And so they're like, okay, what are we going to do? So they are blessed with some unused storage space upstairs that you can see is on its way. So this unfinished, unheated, basically very large closet storage space has a tiny window, and it's not glamorous, but it's space that's not being utilized, and it could be put to work. So the question is, how much would it take to finish it off so that he can have a reasonable office for the winter, and hopefully that's all he'll really need it for? And how much do they have available for such an expenditure? And what function might the room serve afterward if it's done being an office for Eric? And would they get that investment back? What would it mean to the total value of their home after that? So here is what they did. Oh, and the other question I had forgotten to mention here is, not only would they get their investment back, but can they get someone to come in and work on it in the time frame that makes sense for them to have it done in order to use it? And also, that person coming in, what's it going to look like when he's in the house with his team? Because it's upstairs, and they, their main living area is in the downstairs. So what does that mean, safety and contagion wise? And if that's the question, can they go somewhere during the whole thing? Would they go stay with her mom? Would they go find a place to be. You know, like those options are even probably more limited than they would be in typical times. So here's what they did do. They were very wise in drilling down to knowing their need. They were good at making the decisions together. They, as a couple, worked on how they were going to sort of do that. Eric is busy with this job. It's a pretty demanding job. So Lauren is the project manager, and she's really good at this. So this worked. But they made the decisions quickly, and they essentially decided sort of surgically what they needed. And that was like a beautiful thing to watch. So one of the questions that came up that I was pointing out, they knew that considering it a bedroom might be good for their resale value. But there are downsides to that. In the neighborhood that they live in, everything is on a septic system, and every town only allows a certain number of beds and baths to be zoned for that. So if your septic doesn't support 5 bedrooms instead of the 4 that they have, then you have to upgrade the septic, which isn't worth doing just to have your extra office, because we're looking at big money there. Meanwhile, you go back to the question of, okay, so but we just need an office. Is that okay with us? If we put this money into it, would that be enough? Like, we might not see it back, or it might just be a bump. Would we just run even? And if they're living there for the long term, that's probably okay. So it's more of a question. So if we're okay with that, do we have it in our budget to do this work? And then all of the other logistical questions that fall like dominoes after that. So they looked at what they had on hand to do that, and their internal back of the envelope was about $5K. I disagreed, but that was a question because it's pretty simple. They thought about the timing, all of those things, decision of making the decision. Can they get the work done before the weather turns? Then they brought in a builder, and he's somebody they knew and trusted. So they knew kind of his timeline and the format that he works in. They already had a really healthy communication system with this builder. They knew his faults and his, the pros and cons of this particular guy. They knew they trusted him and they wouldn't mind having him in their home. And that was key for the aspect of this that relates to the pandemic. And he finally showed up, which was super exciting. It took them a while to get his attention, which is a separate topic. That could be his deal. That could also be the fact that builders are really, they're really called for right now. And so their time is, it's hard to grab. So when he came to see the house, he noted a couple of the cold realities, which were they have no heat currently in there, and they couldn't tie it into the existing heat. So they would be putting in a whole new mini split system. That's one of those deals that goes in the wall, heating and air conditioning. It does a really good job. It is actually a really good solution for one-off spaces like this, because you can, rather than worrying about the zones for the whole house, you can use it when you need it. So it's pretty efficient, and you're not wasting, so when you're not in the office, you can turn it off. So that was a great idea. They loved this idea, but that tying it into the current electric was going to cause extra work that they didn't anticipate. Pulling it into where it would need to go is just expensive. So that brought the whole total for the project up to 10 grand, which, as you see, is twice what they budgeted. So they really thought it through, and they have, like I said, they have this streamlined process, and they didn't take too long figuring it out, and they found the funds and decided to go for it. They not only decided to go for it, they added a few things to the project. They decided to go big or go home. Yeah, pun intended. They put in another window so that it wasn't so small. The picture you see here is the before. So it had been insulated before, but you're just putting old storage stuff in there. And then they added a double window and kept some closet storage area so that you're walking through a little bit of a hallway, so they could still tuck all that stuff away and put the Christmas decorations in the back. And they knew that it wasn't ever going to be counted as a bedroom, and that's fine. They could use it as a bedroom. Like, it's perfect for when the extra cousins come to stay, but not something that could be counted in your resale as a bedroom. And that's always something that I advise you to look at, because it can really increase your resale. I don't think they're in a real position to need that. So I think that was a sound decision for their particular situation. So here's a quick before and after to take a look at. And here it is. Since this is a pandemic story, it isn't finished yet. It's literally like there are guys over there working on it right now. So, subscribe to my newsletter and I'll send you the total after picture when they're all done. But they think, so they ended up being away for a good part of the work, and they're going to be coming back and navigating that somebody's in my house for at least, I think, a week. So they're not loving that, but they have planned for it and they're ready. And I'll let you know what it looks like. They're making flooring decisions right now. Okay, so we needed a little dance break because we're going to talk about economics next. I'm a cat fan. Looking deep into his eyes, he's very cute. All right, so the next less fun part is talking a little bit about the real estate market right now. I'm calling it real estate weird. The pandemic has had effects on the real estate market, as you know, or as you could imagine if you haven't thought about it very much. But it's strange. It's not like a typical downturn. It's not behaving like it did in 2007, 2008. And I like to think of it as sort of microclimates. You'll see one little segment where things are just like booming, and it might be down to the neighborhood and a certain price point. Or things in that price point are definitely selling, but they're just taking a lot longer, but they're coming in at asking. Or certain other things are super competitive. I've worked with some clients that are in all of these situations. It's really, it's interesting. It's kind of, it makes you know that you need to know what your goals are going into it. And some of that is supply and demand, and the way this event has affected everything differently. It's not like everybody just suddenly doesn't have any money. Some people are just fine, even if they're cautious and worried. Or they're fine, but they hope that they keep this job, and what if something happens to their industry? So they're being cautious. And it also depends on each household situation. Possibly you have two breadwinners and one is totally solid and the other one is iffy. You know, these are the questions that are coming up in people's minds. And I think that is healthy to have those questions, and the answers are not apparent. You know, like there isn't one specific thing to do. But that supply and demand might mean there are some surprising bright spots. A lot of people have decided, okay, this is the time that we're finally going to move out of a more urban area into a more suburban area. So there is a lot of demand for that kind of thing. And that means that if you're already in that place, putting some more equity into your home, making a change that adds to its value, can't be a bad thing for your home value. Now, whether that's the right question for you is another idea altogether. But I think it more than normal actually supports the idea that renovation could actually support your house price. I was just advising some clients about a basement build out in a suburb, but a more urban area, and they would double their, almost double their square footage, and they would double their sale price. So based on current comps. What the future holds, we don't know. If you have the current budget and tolerance for that chaos planning, that goes back to the Venn diagram. Can we do all of these come to a sweet spot? And what do we use for a plan to go forward so we can feel comfortable knowing that at least there's a plan? Another thing that is factoring in right now is that builders are getting really busy. And that is, a basic economic factor. If somebody looks at your project and it's going to be something that would take away his time, and there's something more attractive that might pay him more, you're going to go to the bottom of the list, even if he takes your project. You also might just have trouble getting their attention to get a good bid. You might have longer wait times for things. They may not expose every bit of that process to you, but if, depending on the size of the contractor, and this is like a whole separate seminar, we can talk about the different types of businesses that you engage specifically in the builder area. But it could add to your lead times, meaning say the part of your project that involves plumbing is happening right now, and he can't get a hold of his plumber. You're sitting there waiting, and you may not know. And if that builder is good and is talented and smart enough to be able to figure out how to plug in other things at that time, that's great. But sometimes there is just an impossibility of proceeding before some certain trade needs to finish with their project. So that kind of thing is one of the layers that can lead into longer lead times because of world conditions. Another world condition that's really bothering the work right now is material supplies. So some things like large quantities of lumber, a lot of the stuff that comes through Home Depot comes from China. And a lot of stuff is not coming right now, right? and certain supply chains are breaking down. We're not just seeing it in the grocery stores, we're seeing it in other places. And that will just maybe take a little longer. And it is also affecting prices. So it's the obvious economics 101, right? Supply and demand. So I think that you can kind of plan for a certain percentage higher in just literally the labor and material costs based on those factors. And there are some price increases that don't necessarily go into the supply and demand. The builders are doing, just like a lot of these businesses, you see the small businesses getting special grants, maybe to start up so that they can get PP&E, so that they can assure that everybody in their workplace is safe or is being monitored daily for their health. The contractors in general are needing to do this as well, and it's not straightforward, and it's definitely not something that they're super familiar with doing, and they never loved paperwork to begin with, to be honest. So that's tricky, and that adds into their administrative and cost of operation. So that might also bring your prices up. I don't think it's a huge deal, but it's something to think about. So questions that I would ask myself thinking about a project are, like where is your market? And this is when you reading a lot and knowing a good agent or talk to me, that, like, is it the kind of thing that, what happened to it in 2007 and 2008? What are the prices like here generally? What are the trends? Am I in a neighborhood that's just slowly gentrifying and everybody's scraping a house and turning it into a big McMansion? Or am I in a place that's like, kind of staying the same, but people are doing small improvements? What is happening in my neighborhood is what I would ask. For instance, like, I don't think there are too many places in the greater Boston area that are gonna, like plummet. But there are certain pockets. And like I said, you have to look at that microclimate factor. And then the other thing is your own personal long-term planning. Are you planning to stay there? If you're not gonna be there for more than 5 years, that would be my, the way I would frame the first end of that question. If you're planning to do it within, stay there for 5 years, whatever you do to it, even if economic conditions went down, you'd still be in pretty good shape unless something in your particular neighborhood went wrong. But I think pretty much over 5 years, you can expect to get at least what you put into it, is my general rule of thumb. Don't take it to the bank, but these are just like ways to think about it. So talking about that specific renovation, if you do something that's really outside the norm, I'm saying funky here, but funky to one person means, maybe fabulous to somebody else. We often have at our house, like dreams about, let's put a little sauna in our woodsy backyard. Won't that be great? And then like somebody coming with like, that's weird, I'm just going to tear it down. So you may spend like $6,000 on your special sauna, and you're not getting that back. So you need to go into that knowing you're not getting that back. And that might be fine. Maybe you're going to get $6,000 worth of enjoyment out of that sauna. But if not, you want to think about that larger thing. And in fact, sometimes a funky decision like that can slow down someone being able to picture themselves living in your house. So if you're going to need to consider this an asset and consider it something that you want to be able to sell quickly and smoothly, that you want to not do anything too weird to it. And then another thing that is sort of new during the pandemic is like, do you live in a good escape suburb? And that goes back to that, market conditions. People are moving from more urban places to more suburban places. And I'm guessing just by the people I know in my world, because we live in the suburbs, that's something to consider. Like I think we're going to be pretty good in these places that offer a lot of ways to be solo and be socially distanced rather than solo. It's easier to do that here and with less, I think, real damage to our psyche. And that is something that's going to uphold house. That comes into a real value, it upholds our values in our homes. So even if the cost of doing something right now might be a little more, I think you're probably going to be even more solid on the backside. So here's the same slide with my takeaway. It could be more expensive, but if you're staying long enough, it probably will still be worth it. I'm happy to talk about that. And also, I think utilizing a good real estate agent will let you know, even when you're not planning to sell, like utilize the professionals that you might know talk about those different things and educate yourself about them. And, you know, among agents, don't just pick the first one you see off the street. Get to know what their goals and motivations are, because they don't always align with yours, and their knowledge might not align with your goals and your neighborhood and the specific type of architecture or the town. So that is my bit about that. And that kind of leaves us to the end. Like, those are big picture decisions. Once you really get a feel for knowing your own factors, you have a few more pieces of information here about what the pandemic has brought to the table to make our lives a little more complicated. But there are ways through it if you create a good plan. And if anybody's interested in knowing more about that, I have an upcoming newsletter, and my website will explain a lot of that stuff. You can see it's Perch Planning, but feel free to text or email me at these numbers I'm listing, and give me some questions. I'd love to answer any questions that might come up.
Yeah, you guys, let's hear it. Who has questions? I love how you're like, upcoming newsletter. Get on that newsletter.
I know, everybody. And I know Rosanna's back there laughing too. We've chuckled about that because she's got hers out, and I need to do the same.
You gotta do it. People need to know you're there. People need to be reminded. I personally love the little tent bed. I feel like I need just like a sensory deprivation tank that I can lock myself in at the end of the day.
I'm totally with you. I knew you would like that.
I feel like I have to have that, but it needs to be like with enforced steel and a door with a lock.
Right. My only disappointment in that is that it didn't offer any soundproofing. That was a real bummer.
Yeah. Right. I feel like soundproofing. I honestly just need a tiny house in my yard. You know that. That's all I need is a tiny house in my yard with all of the fixins. So guys, if you have any questions, please stick those in the chat. And Erica is happy to answer any of those questions. I'm sure that she also has a strategy session or some sort of free session, I think. Perhaps, if they go to your website. Okay.
Yeah, it's sort of like if you were to go to my website, say, you would click on the schedule button, say, and there are that introductory call. You can just click on that deal and book a time with me, and we will chat about your situation. So that is available to anybody.
Seriously, get it while the getting's good, you guys. I mean, I had Erica swing by. I mean, she's at my house periodically, but she always has really brilliant things it's just nice to get an a professional outside perspective. Mike wants to know if he can recommend you to people in Illinois.
Yeah, so that's sort of an interesting thing. So paying clients have all been here in the Boston area, but I've worked with a lot of like former colleagues and family members that live far away, helping them figure it all out. And it's made me really realize I should continue to do that. It will be a little bit different, but again, the pandemic has given me more, I've been forced to make things more digital instead of like going into the house and, being like, oh, I see what you mean, and here's what we should do. So yeah, I would say that is a go.
Mike, you're a real estate agent now, right? He's an agent in Illinois. I'm fairly certain. He says yes, he is. So I think that could be great, because I know Erica does team up with other real estate agents, and everything's virtual right now. So why the heck not?
Absolutely.
Erica, I do have a quick question from the book, from the Facebook. So Nora Lee, she's not on here anymore. I guess she was having trouble with her feed, but she says she has a question about turning a small bedroom into a closet. She wants to know if that's wise. She figures as long as it can be reconverted at resale, would it be okay? I don't want it to be a 2-bedroom instead of a 3-bedroom, blah, blah, blah. That was her question.
Right. Generally, and this is definitely from the Boston real estate perspective, and I'd wonder if Michael says the same for something that's a little different, but I think this is a truism anywhere. You don't want to lose your bedrooms. But I think, again, if you're going to use the space and you need it like that, and you don't need it as a bedroom, you set it up like that. Anything you do isn't going to cost you a ton to outfit it, as long as you can switch it back. So you'll know when you need to sell, and you're not going to do something that's so egregiously hard on the walls or what have you. And all of that can be patched and painted and repaired at the end too.
Yeah.
I think that you could turn it into a closet. Just don't, just make sure it still could remain a bedroom. You want to be able to list it with that bedroom.
It's interesting how I've always longed for, so you guys, I live in an 1880s home, and it's it's a side by side, and it's funky and everything's chopped up and it's small. And I've always been like, I just want to blow all of the walls wide open, right? And add as much natural light as I can. And now I'm like, God, I'm so glad that we're all chopped up, because then I can pretend we're in different places in the house, even though we're all kind of on top of each other. But there's just a lot of thinking outside of the box that we need to do right now to maintain sanity and some semblance of normalcy. And my big question right now is, how can I avoid the hot mess that was the spring? How can we make it different and better than the remote learning that occurred in the spring?
Right.
Fingers crossed we can figure that out.
Yeah. We're having serious desk conversations over here. It's getting,
yep.
Yeah.
And I think headphones, that was brilliant. I love the egg timer. You know how I love some Pomodoro time, which is the time blocking approach for those of us who have a difficult time focusing. So I think those were all really good suggestions. Mike says the bubble space thing is great. With school starting, he says that they're in scramble mode, which I think we're all in hardcore scramble mode.
Totally.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Headphones, timers, lap desks.
Benadryl.
Yeah. Gin and tonics, that's for the grown-ups.
Benadryl cocktails in the afternoon,
right.
I don't know.
But yeah, we're trying to figure out how to really make at least one learner in their bedroom, which is completely like costume zone right now. You know, we're thinking it through too. So
yeah,
let me know if you have questions.
We'll get through it. Well, I think that's it.
Yay.
For now. Thank you so much. This was incredible. And you guys, this is also going to be on the AlchemyThree YouTube channel. This will be available, the recording, which I'll make sure that you guys have access to from the Alchemy Business Accelerator group. Definitely connect with Erica. Mike and Erica, I hope you guys can connect. Please let me know if you need some assistance with that. I think that's exciting. I would love to see some long distance partnering. That'd be very cool. So thank you, my dear. This was lovely. You're amazing.
Tara. What a nice
really
opportunity. I appreciate it.
You're very welcome. And who knows, I might just see you very soon. Maybe I'll show up unannounced on your doorstep with a mask. All right. You're the best. Talk soon.
Thank you.
All right. Bye, guys.
Bye.